Welcome to the Racing Nuggets podcast. I'm PJ Noodleman, joined by my co-host, Mr. Dan Plan from the Midwest Racing Connection. Hey, Dan.
Hello, good to be back.
It's a family affair this time around. We have the Kvapil family with us. Dad Travis Kvapil and his sons Carson and Caden Kvapil, both of them champions, actually all three of them champions in their own right. And Dan, you actually pointed out a little nugget for this night that we're recording, which is Tuesday, November 14th. What was your little nugget there?
Yeah, I saw a post on Twitter today that today was the 20th anniversary to the date of Travis's Truck Series championship back in 2003. So I thought that was kind of cool that we were doing this podcast today on the 20th anniversary of that big championship.
That is cool. How does that feel to think about that 20 years ago, Travis?
Oh gosh, it's so long ago. It doesn't, I mean, to me, I can remember it like it was yesterday, very vividly how all that went down that whole season, all the events leading up to it throughout that day. But man, 20 years ago, it's crazy. Been a lot of racing done, a lot of laps turned since then for sure.
It
Yeah.
doesn't seem that long ago to me, actually. And then I was thinking, well, if today is the date, I mean, you think the season's long now? It was like a week or
Yeah.
two longer back then. Jeez.
Yeah, if it was, and I remember, gosh, just that if we can talk a little bit about that season, it was crazy. There was, Brendan Gaughan kind of led the season, the points throughout the year. He was kind of the dominant truck, and but we were hanging on. We were kind of there all season long. Bunch of top fives, bunch of second place finishes. Finished the whole race, or excuse me, every lap of this season minus one lap. So just super consistent. And that day at Homestead, Brendan got wrecked and opened the door for me and a couple of Setzer and Musgrave. We all battled it out to the last lap, and actually till the race was over before they decided who the champion was. So it was a crazy race, and definitely one I'll never forget.
Wow. And 20 years ago, Carson, how old are you?
I'm 20.
So you must have
Yeah, he was.
celebrated Travis.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah, he was born. He was born in May of my championship season, so he was like 6 months old or something like that when we won the Truck Series championship.
That's so freaking cool. That is cool. We're going to get to the boys here too in a bit, but still want to kind of talk a little bit more with you, Travis, specifically about that championship. I mean, you were a guy from Wisconsin trying to work your way up through the ranks, what have you. I mean, what did it take for you at that time to be able to get into a truck? Because it's a whole different model now.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a different business plan for sure for the team owners and sponsors and things like that. I was thinking about that today because I figured we would try to think of things we'd talk about. Man, there's just so many people back in Wisconsin that I needed to, give a huge thanks. And we were driving. Well, actually, we tested Pensacola yesterday, and we were driving home, and we were talking about some of these stories. And I worked at Pathfinder Chassis with Kevin Latch. I kind of worked there part time, and he just gave me a huge break on parts and work after hours to get stuff done. And engines were Bruce Miller B&B engines. He basically gave me engines. I bought one engine in '97 from him, and it blew up the first race at Rockford. And I remember going to Bruce and being like, man, I'm done. Like I can't buy another $20,000 motor or whatever it was at the time. And he's like, well, just come on up, and I think I got something laying around. And if anybody's worked with B&B and Bruce, they know there's always something laying around. So I drove up to Appleton and got another one. And it's crazy. I ran B&B engines from '97 through 2000, and I never paid another bill up there. The rest of my time with Bruce, he really took care of me. Just I wish he was still here. He was one of the guys that without him, there's no way I would be where I was at or have the opportunities I got, and which led to all of this and the boys, in their careers. So he's one of the dominoes that were in place for me to to make it. Honestly, there's just no way I could have ran at the time. It was the Remax Challenge Series. We were going to Colorado and all these different racetracks, and Man, to not have to have an engine bill, that's huge. So Bruce took care of me, and the Kevin Latch took care of me. Let me think. The Prairie Avenue Concrete guys in Beloit, they took care of me. It's just Pat Fagan Chevrolet in Janesville, just a handful of people that really took care of me and help me get where I'm at.
And even the guy on your shirt, Chad Weirs,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, I met Chad in Oktoberfest of '97, and we've been good buddies since then. And he's helped me any way he always could throughout the year. Him and his guys, they would drive out to Colorado and make pit stops for me, or Gateway and make pit stops for me, and huge supporters. And you didn't pay anybody back then. It was all buddies and volunteer help, and I'm sure a lot of that is still, I think, the case in Wisconsin. But you come down here to the Carolinas, you don't get volunteer help, or it's very hard to find volunteer help. Everybody's here to make a living. So those days have kind of passed. And like you said, the model of a young driver making it to NASCAR is so different. Mine was kind of, hey, there's this kid up there running good, winning a few races here and there, and it was kind of word of mouth, and got an opportunity to go test a truck, and the rest is history.
That's amazing. So how did you start to navigate it now for your sons? I mean, obviously they both have talent, and we'll be chatting again with them here in just a bit, but you knew that this was the vision, they had the interest, and you kind of needed to get some sort of a framework in place to sort of start getting the gears rolling for you. So how did you approach that?
Well, I wasn't sure. When we started, we just started running like the Bandolero cars and Outlaw at Charlotte and Concord Speedway down here. Outlaw carts at Millbridge. That's really pretty inexpensive. A couple $1,000s to buy a car. It doesn't cost much to go race every week. So that wasn't too hard. We did that for a few years. But when we moved up to when it was time to move up to the late model stuff, I see, it's hard to do it on your own. It's very hard to do it on your own. The technology of even the late model scene is changed so much. And when I ran late models in the late '90s, there was no bump stops, there wasn't coil bind, it wasn't any of that type of stuff. It was all
big bar, soft spring.
Yeah, it was completely foreign. So when we started to run the big car stuff with Carson, we were fortunate to get hooked up with your husband Toby right away. We ran some limited late model stuff down here, a handful of races. I think when he went up and got in Toby's car up there, he only ran like 12 late model races, or 12, or late model type vehicle races. Down here, they call them late model stocks or limited late models. So, ran one truck race up there with Kelly Byers at Madison. And really it was through, Chad Weirs, I think, that connection kind of came together of, hey, I think, Ty is going to do some more Xfinity racing. They're maybe looking for somebody to run the car a little bit. And that's when that kind of all came together. Let Carson get a few times to run Toby's car or Manstead's car at the, and with Toby taking care of it. And man, it took off really good. I think Carson won in his first Midwest Tour race. First time in the car at Marshfield, I think he finished second. So right away for me, it was like, okay, he's ready. He's capable of this. I didn't really know how I was going to make it all work. I knew I wasn't the guy or the dad or the family that could write a check for $15,000 or $20,000 every week to have him drive for Campy or Donnie Wilson or, one of those premier teams. Brad Manstead and his wife, Nancy, they really welcomed us in, and Toby and his guys welcomed us in. And really for me, it was a big education for like a year and a half, working next to Toby, seeing how his cars worked and what changes did what. And then I realized, what, the only way we're going to be able to do this is I'm going to buy a car myself, and we're going to figure it out. We're going to go test, and we're going to go run. And we did that. I bought a car down here in the Carolinas, and a Toby car. And, we just started working through all the bugs, and myself and Carson, and going to tracks and testing. And I could afford to buy a car, the truck trailer and the equipment to go do it. and race every week, but I couldn't, I wasn't the guy that was going to spend 15 or 20 grand every week to write a check for my kid to drive for somebody else. So that's how we did it. We worked hard, bought some good equipment, and just worked and worked and worked. And I'm telling you, there was times, and Carson can touch on this too. We literally parked in the middle of the race because we were so bad, and we were getting lapped and ran horribly. But we were all learning. We didn't, and then like a year and a half later, we're winning races. He wins the Cars Tour Super Late Model Championship down here. And that was a big springboard for him. So a lot of work in the shop, a lot of hours, a lot of testing. We would test like crazy just to try to figure the cars out, and Carson learned the cars and learn the tracks.
Well, I know you were on the phone last night with my husband, which actually triggered the whole thing. Hey, they would all be really great to get on the podcast.
Yeah.
But I knew it was you, not just because of your voice. In case you didn't know it, Tobe usually puts you on speakerphone because he can't hear. So I get in and I'm driving the car and he's still on the phone with you and I'm listening. And I thought it was your voice, but I wasn't sure. But I knew it was you just based on the questions that you were asking, because you ask very specific questions about setups. And you're the only person that I have ever heard on the phone with him that does that. So I mouthed over to him, "Is that Travis Kvapil?" And he goes, "Yep." I'm like, "Cool. I want him and his kids on the podcast." He's like, "Okay, just a minute. I'm doing this." But go ahead.
Go ahead. No, I was just going to say, I appreciate that. And I've learned so much working with Toby, and like I said, in 2018, I think it was, when Carson started driving that car, I didn't have a clue, and I didn't know what bump stops we even hardly looked like, let alone here we are tuning them and the sway bars and all this. So much has changed from the time I ran them in the late 90s. So Toby has been a big, huge part of our success. He's always been open to talking to me about setups and what I need and things to try. And once we kind of got going, I tell you, some flattering moments were when we won Nashville and he was calling me like, "Hey, what are you doing? What are you running? What setups, what bump springs did you have?" So it was cool to be able to finally kind of repay the favor, right? And send some information back north.
That is cool. That actually, the information and feedback actually brings me to my first question for you, Carson, by the way. Now, welcome to the Racing Nuggets podcast. So you've had the opportunity then, obviously, to learn as you go with your dad, being able to know what you want in a car and being able to kind of give that feedback in a way that they can work with that. How has that progression been for you from the beginning? And it must help having a dad who can kind of explain that to you.
Yeah, I mean, even from the time when I started running bandoleros and the carts and stuff, it was like, I guess back then I really don't remember what how my feedback was, but I guess having someone that's raced all their life, not just somebody that is there working on the car that's never seen one before, it was a huge help all the way up to where I am now. Even just being able to rely on somebody that you can trust. That's obviously he's done a lot with his career, so that what he's telling you ain't wrong, and that really helped whenever I was starting running supers and just starting racing in general. So learning from him, kind of deciphering what he had to say from what I was giving him, really taught me a bunch. And I feel like now it's to the point where I can kind of, I guess, since I can work on the cars, I can kind of call either way. I can say what it's doing, but I can also throw out recommendations of what I think the car change wise we need to do and stuff like that. So I also do think that working on the cars and understanding how they work is a huge advantage or benefit, I guess you could say, because I honestly don't know how some of these kids that don't work on the cars, how they really do it. I mean, you got to have a really smart guy taking care of the car to be able to really decipher it. So, yeah.
Well, I think, let me interrupt you right there. I think that's the difference. In my opinion, I think that's the difference from the good drivers and the great drivers. Like I'm sure all the drivers can come in and say it's tight, or I need, more drive or whatever. Carson he's been the type of driver. after about a year of kind of learning everything. He's the driver that's not just it's tight, maybe and the crew chief goes off on making changes. Carson will say it's tight. I don't want to take wedge out because it's going to hurt me here, and let's raise the left side panhard bar. He can break it down and understand what changes in the car affect what he's looking for to help it, right? Like he's not just going to be a general free me up type, he knows what part of the car he's looking for. So I think that's is the difference in a lot of his success. Like he understands what changes do what, and he knows where that affects him where in the corner. So I give him a lot of praise for that. And that's just experience. That's just listening. When we make changes, I always tell the boys what I'm changing and what maybe to feel what we think it's going to do. So they're learning from that every time we're at the track testing or practicing or whatever. I don't just make a change and send them. I tell them what the change is, and I try to explain what we think we're trying to achieve and what to look for. And Carson's been able to pick that up, and Caden's not too far behind, in the same feedback.
That's excellent. And I do want to congratulate you too, Carson. I know you picked up the Cars Late Model Stock Car Championship. So congrats to you on that. And your brother Caden picking up the Cars Pro Late Model Championship this year as well. Caden, your dad mentioned that you're starting to really pick up that the feel, the lingo, the feedback, and all that. How has that been for you to be able to not only have your dad to lean on, but your older brother? You got a good, tight relationship together? Or do you guys still like give each other slugs and loogies?
Definitely a little bit of both, but it's definitely great having both of them there. Especially last year, it was helpful a lot. We would always be parked next to each other, me and Carson at the Cars 2 races, and it was when I was running my own my dad's car, so he was always able to help us whenever I needed it. He'll always rely on him to ask him about the track, and he would always give me recommendations on what to fix and how I'm doing stuff, or if I'm doing something wrong on the track. And well, obviously my dad with the setup adjustments and stuff, I could tell him what I think I was feeling based on where I was on the track, and pretty much all the changes I felt like would be in a good direction, point me the right way at least. So far this year, I feel like I've definitely progressed a lot in my feedback, like my dad said, but it's definitely been helpful having both of them by my side. Obviously, through my whole career, I feel like when I first started, I had no clue what I was talking about. When I was racing mini outlaws at Millward, I don't even think I knew what loose or tight meant. So from then to now, it's definitely been a big change, and I feel like I'm just getting started learning what the car actually does.
Nice. Now, you guys were just practicing. Again, we're recording this. Today is November 14th. Y'all were practicing at Pensacola just last night and yesterday, which that's a school day, right? So did you have school, Caden, or what's the story there?
Yeah, I did, but I ended up having to miss it. I've missed a lot of days recently. Last like 3 weeks or so since last Tuesday or 2 Tuesdays ago. I've only been there for about 3 or 4 days, so I'm getting a little bit behind. But you gotta do what you gotta do, especially when it's for racing. So I've had a bunch of absences, but I keep my grades up really high and get all A's. So I mean, it's okay with me, I guess, and my parents. It's good for me to be out doing racing instead of, I guess, doing what other kids my age would probably be doing. So it's good. It's for a good reason at least, and to keep my grades up how they are, I think it's fine. So hopefully my teachers don't get too mad about it.
I guess I'm just floored that you guys still do public school instead of the online school.
I
Why
know.
why
Yeah.
why that choice, Travis?
I don't know. But honestly, we went with Carson, it was almost to the point of we can't do this anymore. But like that's when COVID kind of hit, and shoot, it all turned on to it was all online then. In like Carson's, I think senior year, I think he only had maybe one class, I think, in person. He had like an internship, and two other classes were online. So it got easy. Like even Caden this year, he only has 3 classes at school, in person. So we've been fortunate. We have teachers that work with us, this, you're in Mooresville, right? It's Race City. They understand. It seems like they work with you, and especially, I mean, when you got Caden in your corner, he's a 4.0 plus GPA. He does a great job. He keeps up with his work. If there was problems there, I'm sure we'd be having different conversations with the school, but he keeps up with it. He keeps his grades up. He's responsible. So far, so good.
Well, I actually kind of consider what you boys are doing kind of like going to school for the trades,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you're learning some mechanical things and turning it into what could become a really good career. And actually, Carson, you are obviously tapped in with Dale Earnhardt Jr. You've been driving on his team. That's pretty freaking cool to be able to have that on your resume. What's that like working with him, and how is he as a mentor for you?
Yeah, I mean, after running my dad's super late model stuff and winning that Cars Tour championship, I was fortunate enough to get the opportunity to pretty much take over Josh Berry's spot running the late models. So just getting into that, I was super nervous and super excited, but fortunately, it was the group of guys that are over there are, I guess, my type of group of guys, and I get to go over the shop and pretty much work full time, 8 to 5. So I kind of feel like I fit right in. It's not one of those deals where I'm just showing up. I'm still hands on, and I still got to clean the car off every week. So just doing that, and just doing that for a team that's of that caliber is pretty much what everybody could ask for. So, but yeah, working with Dale, we actually are racing this coming weekend at Florence together. So I'm really excited for that. It's actually really nice having him, or in the past Josh, being a teammate, just having someone to lean on, and we make a change to both cars, and I'm really not sure if I want what it did, and I can rely on Josh or Dale. So just having that in my back pocket is really nice, and also all the on track stuff, I'll always lean on them. Just having a teammate just makes it a lot easier on those weekends. So it's a big help to have him and my dad. Both those guys are obviously super experienced race car drivers. So I'd say just learning a lot of the off track stuff from Dale, and obviously my dad too, but Dale's still really involved with the sport, and he knows what's going on. So to have those guys, all the guys over Junior Motorsports to rely on, I feel like I've from whenever I ran the super late model with my dad, I've really, I guess, learned a lot about the off track stuff and the business of it, more so than just working on the race cars all night and going to the track.
Both of you boys go ahead, Dan. I'm sorry.
Well, I was going to say for those of us that don't have late model stocks nearby, I think they're a little bit different than Super. Are they still like a truck arm, like a Xfinity or truck type car?
Yeah, it is a perimeter chassis. It's an old Busch car, basically. Steering box, crate motors that make low 500 horsepower, and truck arms and GM brakes. They're a little bit I guess you could say, behind the times compared to super late models, but those cars, you just really gotta drive them different. I mean, you drive race cars close to the same each track, but those things are they don't have the corner speed as the straight rail cars do. So it's all about momentum and using the brake pedal. The brake pedal is really important. So I feel like those cars really teach you a bunch about how to slow the car down efficiently and how to carry momentum, and not just drive in straight and drive off straight with motor like the super late models. So none of them are easy compared to the other, obviously. So just a different type of driving style and different type of chassis.
You boys are both growing up now in a time where social media is such a huge piece of both promotion and just life in general. When your dad was racing, even when Dale Jr. was really racing, getting started, you didn't have to worry about somebody videotaping you out in public doing something. So has that impacted kind of how you approach just operating yourself out in public? I mean, do you have to worry about that a little bit?
I mean, I guess for Caden, he might not be in the spotlight as much, I guess you could say. Like, especially since I started driving for, Dale Jr. it's a big deal, and I feel like everybody is watching you more so than when you're running your dad's super late model. So definitely, you just can't be that guy. I feel like I've done a pretty good job not being that guy ever really. So it's always a little bit of something you gotta pay attention to, but I feel like it's at the same time it's not something that I'm having to bite my tongue on. I feel like I'm not gonna go out there and say anything or do anything like that. So definitely just a little more pressure though. Just even though you're not gonna do something, you still worry about it.
Right, right. Because things can be taken out of context, right?
Yeah.
I think your
Exactly.
dad's done a good job of promoting the both of you on social media through the years, because that's where I've seen most of the stuff as Travis's pictures of the boys working in the shop from, I don't know, the past 8 years or whatever. So it's that's where I've gotten a lot of
Yeah.
my familiarity.
Yeah, that's cool. I mean, PJ, you kind of touched on that. Like, I, it's hard for the boys to get their foothold in the sport. We were fortunate, man, the timing for Carson it was just one of them things where the timing just worked out. I kind of knew Dale Jr., I kind of knew LW Miller, but it wasn't like we had that relationship. I didn't know Josh Berry at all. I didn't know Brian Schaefer, their crew chief, but we were friends at Millbridge, and we kind of, say pass high in passing, but worked out to where Carson was winning races down here in a family car, and they saw, and he's winning races at Millbridge, he's winning races in a micro sprint. They just saw, like, there's a young driver that needs an opportunity. Man, it just worked out, and there's those opportunities are super hard to find and super hard to come by. But I can tell you, like, even as hard as it is for these opportunities, I still feel like I have a step ahead, right? Like, I have a lot of connections in my contact list, in the industry, in the sport, whether it's, someone with Ford or Chevrolet or Toyota, sponsors, team owners. Man, I'll tell you what, Carson was winning races for 5 years, and I'm texting. I had a list of like 8, 10 people I would text every time he won a race or every time he did something cool. And it never really got anywhere. I was kind of surprised, and it's tough. It's for a young driver to make it in these times, without having a checkbook behind you. It's really, really tough. But the main thing you do is just go out there and win races. That always seems to lend itself to opportunities.
Yeah, winning fixes a lot of
Yeah.
problems, doesn't it? Yeah. So there's actually a couple of things that you mentioned there, and I think it really was the perfect storm for you, Carson, because it does take relationships, whether they're really great relationships or ones that you're still kind of developing, or you have a little fringe that you can at least get your foot in the door to talk to somebody, but you definitely have to perform. But there is always that piece of luck, the timing of everything. There've been a lot of people from the Midwest who have had opportunities, but the timing didn't hit at the right time for when they were reaching that
Mhm.
opportunity, and there wasn't a seat for them to get into. So absolutely, Carson, you got a great opportunity in the timing, the luck of it all in that regard, but you definitely put your piece ahead by making sure that you were performing. So yeah, it's a delicate balance to be able to get to where you want to go with that, which brings me to my next question for both of you boys. Where do you ultimately want to end up at? What do you hope for, Caden?
I feel like everyone that is racing, especially around my age, their end goal is to be racing on Sundays in the Cup Series. I'd say mine's probably up there too. Really any series in NASCAR, but I feel like everyone wants to go to the Cup, and that's obviously where I want to be at when I get older. So obviously I'm just gonna keep working for it, but as right now I'm still racing pros and a little bit of super racing, so it's really far away from where I'm at now, but it still don't mean I'm not gonna try to get there.
And you, Carson?
Yeah, I mean, pretty much mirrored what he said there. It's we all want to go race on Sundays and in any rank of NASCAR, but especially the Cup Series. It being the higher series, obviously. So I mean, there's a lot of things that gotta happen for us two, especially. But I feel like I'm in a pretty good spot where I'm at, and I'm content where I'm at as well. So I'm not rushed or I feel like I need to get somewhere right now. It's kind of one of those deals for me where I wanna move up to the Xfinity Series. I want to run truck races, and obviously the end goal is Cup, but at the same time, running Dale Jr.'s late model and maybe jumping in a truck or ARCA car here or there. That's really fun. So either way, I'm happy where I am, and obviously if I get the opportunities to move up into the trucks, Xfinity, whatever, right? It's something that I'm gonna take full advantage of. But the spot I'm in, I feel content until I get an opportunity. So just sitting here waiting patient and hoping for something.
I love that. So, Dan, do you have another question?
Well, I was going to kind of go along those lines and see if you, even though you're both running late models now, do you still plan on running micros, and any chance that you'll come back to Thunder Hill in Wisconsin?
Yeah, for me, I mean, I'd love to. It's one of those things where the we don't really have a micro, or we have a micro as a family, but it's not really our highest priority, I guess you'd say. I ran some of the micro stuff in Millbridge, won a few races, and drove for a bunch of other people. But the position I'm in, it's not like it's not terrible, right? But I'm working every day at Junior Motorsports. I'm racing. It feels like every weekend with those guys, and the weekends that I'm not, I'm either racing my dad's Super or doing something, right? So it's one of those deals where for me is it's pushed back on the priority list. But I actually was able to jump in. Me and Caden both ran a outlaw kart race at Millbridge. About 2 years ago, a year or two ago, they kind of got rid of the series that we raced in, and just for one race this season, they did a big race, and I think they got 15 carts there, and me and Caden both borrowed and I guess put together carts that some other people had laying around still. So we were able to do that, fortunately. But for me, at least, it's kind of a thing of priority.
If you had to tell somebody the best qualities about the racer in your brother, Caden, and I'm going to ask you the same question, Caden. So, Carson, what would you say are the best qualities that Caden brings to the table as a racer?
I mean, I'd say there's a few differences for me and him, and one that comes to mind is I guess he's more patient and I guess thinks it out. I guess I mean it's hard to say definitely or not, but I would say he's a little more patient, thinks things through. Whereas I'm more the just get after it type. So I'm sure in some ways his style of driving or psychological style, whatever you want to call it. I'm sure there's some ways that benefits him, and there's same for me. So I'd say just being his thought process and taking it in first before you do it is kind of the biggest difference, I'd say.
How about you, Caden? What's the biggest thing that your brother Carson brings to the table in racing?
Yeah, I was kind of gonna say what he said, but the opposite. Obviously, I remember like outlet cart stuff. I always thought he was way more reckless at the same time than I was, but he was careful. Like he didn't go out there and wreck it or flip, but he was always bouncing off the fence and just never really lifting. Like kind of feel like that's how he is now. Still, he just he always gives it 100%. But he doesn't go out there and junk a car. He's careful while he's doing it, and he's always fast at the same time. So it's always just him. I guess you could say around the top in outlet carts. He was out of control, I thought, but in his book, I guess he wasn't. While I was trying to run the top carefully without hitting the fence, he was all up on it. So I'd say that, and just his work ethic and how hardworking he is to get where he is now, and it just helps a lot.
So to summarize, then Carson is cautiously aggressive and
Yeah.
Caden is very calculated. Is that maybe the fair assessment there?
Yeah, Carson's like grip it and rip it, and wherever it's going to come out on the other side is where it's going to land. Caden, he's always had speed, but yeah, I think like how Caden said, Carson looks reckless a lot of times, especially on the dirt. You're like, what are we doing? But it always ends up. I would say always ends up. Usually ends up in victory lane, right?
Yeah.
And Caden definitely He's more methodical, hit your marks, you know, he'll hit that same lap time every lap. He'll hit the right marks every lap. It's just a little bit different.
Yeah. And I think that's all part of the learning process as you guys keep growing. That honestly is one of the coolest things about both of you. You're both quite accomplished already. And how old are you guys? I mean, you still got a load of career ahead of you. How old are you, Caden?
I turned 17 in like 2 weeks or 3 weeks, I think. So I'm 16 right now, but December 10th, I'll be 17th, right after Snowball.
And you, Carson, how old are you now?
I am 20. I turn 21 in May. So
All
uh,
right.
whenever you asked me earlier at the beginning of this, I had to think about it for a second. I wasn't sure if I was 20, but no, I'm sure that gets worse as you get older. But yep,
Yeah,
20. Yeah.
that's funny. It does get worse as you get older. I kind of just quit aging myself. If people ask me my age, I just throw out a
Start counting
number.
backwards.
Yeah. I don't know. 39 sounds good. We'll go with that. So, what is on the horizon for you all? I know, like we've been talking, you were practicing at Pensacola. Are you both going to be running during the Snowball Derby, or what's the plan there?
Yeah, me and Caden are both gonna run the Snowball Derby, and I'm gonna be running my dad's car, and Caden's gonna be running Archie St. Hilaire's Toby car that my dad basically takes care of. So, before that though, I get to go to Florence this weekend with the late model stocks for the South Carolina 400 with Dale Jr. So, getting to run that, then I guess getting ready for the Derby is a good way to finish off the season.
Indeed. So, Caden, is it both going to be both your first times there at the Snowball?
It's gonna be, it's gonna be my first time at the track in general. My first Snowball Derby, and Carson's second. He ran it last year,
That's right.
but it's definitely gonna be cool for me, I guess. Hopefully, I can make the show. I think I should be able to, but it's obviously a stout field of cars, and it's gonna be my third ever super race, and at that big of a event, it's gonna be super cool.
The qualifying for the Snowball Derby, I think, is some of the most nail biting qualifying I have ever watched at this level. And it's so strange because everybody is qualifying at night when it's cold and you don't know. I mean, that's not what the race conditions are going to be, but that's what you're going to qualify in. And it is just the most dramatic knockout qualifying I've ever witnessed in person. So hopefully you both are well prepared for that.
Yeah, I hope so. I can firsthand tell you that my last year was my first year at the Derby, and that qualifying was very stressful. Even though you have at least in our case that year, and hopefully this year, you have a good car, and that you should be able to make it right without as long as you don't mess up. It's still just so nerve wracking though. It's
Everybody's got good cars down there. That's the thing, man. It's stout.
I tell you what though, when you hit that lap and you know before you even hear the time, you know that you're gonna make the show just off your lap. It's a big relief, and especially sitting down in the roped off area of the cars that made it in the show is pretty cool to be in. So hopefully me and Caden can both get to that point at least this season, and hopefully we're going for the win, but at the same time, just hoping to make the show and make all laps.
I was
Indeed.
amazed that I think it was 5 years ago was the first time I went to the Derby and showing up Friday night and seeing how many people were there to watch qualifying. I didn't think, I think there's more people watching qualifying at the Derby than most of the cup races these days for their qualifying, because there is a huge crowd for Friday night qualifying, and I find myself glued to the TV these days watching it when I'm not there.
It's a good time to watch, and it is nerve wracking, but it's really exciting too. And a reminder for both of you: do not have your cell phones on you. Well, after you're qualifying, do not take anything from anybody. None of that stuff, because you'll get pinched for that. So just be careful. I'd hate to see a good run get ruined by a mistake like that. That's for sure. So, what is a good car? I mean, how do you know, both of you, when you're in the car and you're driving, when you know you got that love and feeling? What is it that you experience when you know you got that love and feeling for the car that you're going to be racing?
I mean, obviously it just depends on what car you're driving and stuff, but like the Derby qualifying, you're so nervous that you're not going to make the show or you're going to mess up. All it takes is since the field's so good and everybody has good cars, all you do is slip once and you're out of the show. So just being able to get through 1 and 2, like turn 1 and 2, and feel like you're locked in the track and know you had a good corner there. And then you get really nervous going down the backstretch because you know that you have a good lap going. You just cannot mess it up. And the feeling whenever you're getting out of 4 after it feels like it was a slot car is pretty cool. So obviously not all the times are like that. And I guess you got to prepare yourself for that. But at the same time, is if you get a good car and you make the right changes and you have the right people behind you, you should feel like a slot car in qualifying. So I guess it's hard to sum up, obviously, but it just feels like you're locked in.
How about you, Caden? Do you have a different feeling when you know you got that love and feeling for a car?
I'd say it's pretty close to what he said, especially at Pensacola. When I tested yesterday, it was my first time there, but the corners are, in my opinion, really different from 1 and 2 to 3 and 4. And it's just track is super quick compared to anything else I've been to. And I feel like qualifying there, especially at nighttime when you got new tires on and full tape, it's gonna be feeling like you're going super quick, like a slot car, like he said, and you're just gonna be flying. But I feel like you've got to really hit turn 1, especially. You got to wrap the paint really good and have a good enough car to where it'll turn and you can hold it while you're on the throttle. So I feel like just having good turn, especially in qualifying at Pensacola, is going to be really important. And then you can just get off the corner pretty good from there if you get it wrapped good. But that track's super quick, so it's definitely gonna be nervous for me going into qualifying my first time with all the cars that are there. And I've always been nervous going into qualifying, no matter where I'm racing or what series I'm in. So it's definitely gonna be nerve-wracking, probably the most nerve-wracking time in my racing career so far, going into my 2 laps there, but I'll give it the most I can.
So why does qualifying make you so nervous, Caden? I'm just curious.
I don't know. I feel like it's just because you only get 2 laps, and if you make one mistake, you can either be starting from the front row or the 5th row. And I feel like just me, I haven't really, well, until this year, I'd say I haven't really had a whole lot of like qualifying session experience, I guess, where you only get 2 laps. When I first started late miles, I felt like it took me a good 3 laps maybe to get up to speed. So I've always been nervous going into it, even in outlaw carts and stuff. You only get a couple laps, and you got to push it as hard as you can without making any mistakes. So I feel like it's difficult, but you obviously have more grip than any other time. So you kind of can lean on the car a lot more.
For sure. So another couple questions here yet for you, and then Dan, if you've got something, jump in. Don't let me keep
I was
railroading.
I was just going to bring up that I was impressed that they used the reference slot car. I didn't think any younger kids these days knew what slot cars were, but I'm really impressed by that. Got a special set of magnets to run at the Derby.
Oh,
I don't know
funny.
where that I don't know where that terminology's come from. I guess we did have a slot car track here in town. We went and played when they were younger, so maybe that's where that came from.
Travis, did you always know that the boys were going to be interested in racing, or did you just kind of let them discover it? How did that all come together at their start?
Yeah. So not really sure. It just kind of when Carson was about 8, 9, 10 years old, we would go down and watch the legend cars and the Bandoleros at Charlotte Motor Speedway. And it was just, they'd have bus races and, all sorts of goofy stuff. But it never really seemed to draw him in that much. And I think he was 10, it was like all of a sudden he just was like, hey, I want to try that, So we got hooked up with some friends that had a Bandolero and we went and run. And I remember his first laps in a Bandolero. It was horrible. It was just like, what are you doing, man? Like, have you never seen this before? He's running like the 4th lane off the bottom. And it was like, oh my gosh, maybe this isn't going to be for him. But he quickly learned, and you're young. It was all new. So, but right away, once he kind of got that bug, I guess you'd say, he's been hooked, and he's done a great job. And obviously he's learned a lot since some first days in a Bandolero. But Caden, he was always kind of just in the shadows, right? Like he's always been that young driver that anytime we move him up into a class or a new car or something different, he immediately picks it up and has speed. Like yesterday, we were at Pensacola. He's never been there. like he said, is only his third time in a super, and you ride around for a couple laps, scuffing tires, getting heat in the gear and the brakes and everything, and then he opened it up and driving down the front stretch, it was man, on the chip. First lap's like a 1740. I was like,
Oh.
okay, we're gonna be just fine here, So he's always been able to adapt quickly and get up to speed, in whether it's an outlaw card or a micro super late model. So it's fun watching the boys develop and take on new challenges. And you know, in a couple of weeks we'll be on to another new challenge here at Pensacola.
Awesome. Caden, it's a question I had for you is it hard to be the youngest, basically? So, I mean, you're kind of in a little bit of Carson's shadow, but at the same time, you're making your own noise and you're establishing yourself too. So, what is that like for you to balance that? You love your brother, I assume, and you still want to establish yourself too. So, how does that work for you?
Yeah, I mean, definitely a little bit. I kind of felt like I was, like you said, definitely an outlaw cards when we raced against each other. It was kind of hard to, I guess, make my own name when we were racing each other because he would always be up front running. I only got a couple wins when we raced each other during the couple years we did. But once he moved on and I got in my own cars racing without him, I guess in the pro stuff, I feel like it's been a little bit easier. Winning races, I feel like you can get your name out there a lot easier. And once I didn't have to really worry about him stealing wins like he was in the outlaw cart stuff, it's been a lot easier. I feel like to get my own publicity and show people that I have good talent as well, and not just him. That I can showcase it myself instead of just the little outlaw carts at Millwards we used to race, but in big cars too.
Do you two ever go racing at the go-kart track down there in North Carolina and just like regular ham and egger people out there doing the go-karts? Do you guys ever race each other straight up that way?
Uh, I don't know. I mean, at times, obviously, we've had our run-ins and stuff like that, but for the most part, it's been pretty clean. And obviously, Dad having the cars, we can't wreck his cars. So
The only time you guys do that, like you go down to Victory Lane karting in Charlotte, you and your buddies, it always turned into I'm just gonna say it. It's just a shit show, you know. They ain't racing. They just it's all it's a matter of, are we gonna get kicked off the track or not? That's what it ends up being, and just a lot of laughs and a lot of fun. But straight up racing each other, I don't think they haven't done that in a while.
Well, that will be interesting to see then at the Snowball Derby. I'm expecting both of you to make the race, and I expect both of you to make some noise too. So good luck to you. One final question for each of you boys. What is the plan for next year? What are you going to be running? Where will where will people get to see you?
yeah, for me, I think I'm just in kind of a mirror of 2023, just running the late model for junior and trying to run for points in the Cars Tour and a handful of other races like that. But obviously, I was able to get one ARCA start and one truck start this season, so hopefully we can
TA2.
Say that again.
You ran some TA2 races.
Yeah, I actually totally forgot about that. Ran some TA2 road course races and just a handful of kind of some different stuff that I haven't done before. So hopefully on top of the late model schedule, I can fill in with some TA2 races and hopefully get a shot in a truck or ARC car or Xfinity car. I mean, anything, right? The position I'm in is just kind of take what you can get and go learn from it.
And make the opportunities for yourself too. How about you, Caden? What are your plans for 2024?
Yeah, I think we're trying to get out of the pro stuff a little bit and start running some more super races here, somewhere in Florida, maybe up in Wisconsin area, just anywhere we can when we have the time. If it's for my dad or for another team, whoever I'm running for, we're gonna be trying to run supers more so than anything. Off weekends if we have the time and we're just not racing anywhere and there's a Cars Tour Pro race, I think we're going to try to hit those and run a couple here and there, not for points or anything, just when we have the free time. We'll have our family owned cars here at the shop and we'll have our pro stuff ready. So if we do if we have free time, we can come run it and just give me more seat time because I feel like that's just going to help me as a driver. But I think I'm going to stick with more so late model stuff than anything. Hopefully, maybe get a couple chances here and there for any opportunities. But I'm really looking forward to running some more supers, especially next year. They're a lot more fun than pros, I'd say. So I enjoy running them.
Nice. Well, I don't want to date myself, but I'm going to do it. And you boys probably don't know who the Partridge family is, but Travis, I got to tell you, I think of the Partridge family when I see the Kvapil family rolling down the highway in your big old RV, and you guys are traveling from race to race. It's almost like the Kvapil family circus, really.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. We did that for a couple of years with Carson. You know, we raced up in Wisconsin a bunch and all over Nashville and stuff like that. And hopefully we get some opportunities to do that again with Caden this summer. Load up the wife and the dog and the granddaughter and pick up some crew help once we get to wherever we land. It's a lot of fun. It's a great education, and it's a great, man, I'm telling you what, we have made some ton of memories racing over the years with each other. So look forward to making more. Just super proud of both the boys and everything they've done so far, and everybody that supported them along the way. Just a huge thank you.
Awesome. Well, good luck to you both this year. Looking forward to this next year. Good luck at the Snowball Derby and at Florence for you as well, Carson. And we are looking forward to seeing what 2024 holds for the Kvapil boys.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, guys. Look forward to talking to you again sometime.
Thanks.